Hello, welcome back to my network. I'm with George B., the president and CEO of USAU Corp. George, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Just to start things off, I know we've interviewed Luke in the past in Zurich in November, but for those less familiar with the company, a brief company overview and potentially a bit on the capital structure as well.
Great. So US Gold is a US-based company. We are listed on the NASDAQ. A little bit of different scenario for a junior mining company, but we trade very well on the NASDAQ. We have roughly 8.4 million shares outstanding. Very tight capital structure. At the moment, around $6 million in treasury. And we have gotten to a point where we pivoted the company towards development. We started life as exploration, but with my joining the company, I'm a 42-year mining veteran. Many of the big companies, Barrick and so on, in my background. We pivoted the company to look at developing the Copper King asset. So we're actually in the permitting phase of that. We've done a pre-feasibility study that was published in December of 2021. We've done all the work for the feasibility study. We're yet to publish that, and that'll be coming out this year. So really, our treasury carries us through the permitting cycle.
Brilliant. Okay. I want to go into obviously CK and the asset, but you mentioned there your background. How long have you been with the company? And obviously, it sounds like you've got a lot of experience in gold, especially there with Barrick. So, what's your experience?
Okay, so look, my experience is, I'm English originally, and I did 8 years in South Africa with Anglo American Gold Underground and Rio Tinto Palabora Copper. I joined a little outfit called American Barrick back in 88, 89, and was there right when the Barrick asset Gold Strike was a hill, not a hole. And since then, I worked with them on 3 occasions actually. Went down to Peru, finishing the development of Purina in Peru. And then went to Argentina to take Veladero from an advanced exploration project into production. So, yeah, that's my background with Barrick, but I've worked also with Kinross, left Barrick once to do Fruta del Norte in Ecuador.
Yep.
So really, Jaguar mining in Brazil. Yeah, lots of interest. So, frankly, I was semi-retired, but the opportunity to join US Gold and advance the CK Gold project was really exciting. So, now I'm 2 years into my assignment with US Gold Corp, having joined in September of 2020.
Good. And it seems like a lot has happened in the last 2 years. Like you said, your feasibility study is coming out soon. You've potentially got permitting approval, hopefully towards the end of this year. But let's take a step back. Before you even joined the company, what was exciting? Why did you decide that this was the right place for you?
Well, our chairman, Luke Norman, who you've spoken to before, he asked me to take a look at it. At the time, they were looking to maybe monetize it to fund exploration in Nevada. So I took a look at it, and from the perspective of a project, I said, look, you'd be crazy to sell this project because it's got a very low strip ratio, dead simple mining, dead simple processing. It's really in the southeast corner of Wyoming, really ideally located for all of the kind of things that you need to be able to put a mine together. We're 4 hours south of Gillette, Wyoming, an hour and a half north of Denver, 6 hours from the Salt Lake City. So all the equipment manufacturers are there. You don't need to carry big inventories of parts and equipment. We're 20 miles outside of Cheyenne, Wyoming. People can go home at night. We've got power, water. I mean, it's just a great project. So I said, having said that to him, they said, look, you got to put your money where your mouth is now, and you come and run the damn thing. So that's what we're doing.
No, good. Okay. So talk us through the work that you have done since you've joined to now. Obviously, the pre-fees was a big milestone. Maybe we can also go into the economics of that pre-fees and what you're expecting.
Essentially, when I joined the company in September of 2020 to move the company forward, we had a preliminary economic analysis, but the project had been dormant. So what we needed to do was go out there and start all the environmental baseline studies, fauna, flora, surface water, subsurface water, and so on, and then go and do some drilling, prove up and improve upon the metallurgical data that we had from the PEA, do all the geotechnical drilling. So all of that work has been done. We encapsulated that in the pre-feasibility study, which was published in December of 2021. That pre-feasibility demonstrated that the economics of the project at $1,625 gold, 325 per pound copper were really robust. That robust to the extent that we have an all-in sustaining cost of $800 per gold equivalent ounce. And the project over a 10-year mine life would produce 108,000 gold equivalent ounces. Now, 70% of our revenue comes from gold and 30% from copper. And, just as a reminder, the operation is essentially open pit operation, less than a 1-to-1 strip ratio. We take the ore that we mine and crush it and grind it. We then do a flotation step, a regrind, and then we finish with a final concentrate. That concentrate is extremely valuable. It is north of 20% copper and 2 to 3 ounces of gold. And, unlike a lot of concentrates, we don't suffer with contamination from arsenic, nor mercury, nor fluorine. So that's an attractive concentrate to blend with for smelters to blend with other less attractive concentrates. So we've got a good market for our product.
Good. Oh, so you're talking about all-in sustaining costs there being around $800. That would put it in a pretty low quartile in terms of where you are on the cost curve compared to other mines around you. Is that just simply because it's so simple in terms of metallurgy, it's open pit, you're so close to existing infrastructure? I assume that must be the reason, right? Because that's a really good all-in sustaining cost.
It is, and I think with inflation and fuel prices, you can anticipate it going a little north of that, but not too far. It's a good snapshot. But why is that? Well, with a very low strip ratio, you don't have to move too much waste to get at the ore. The terrain around us is very amenable to hauling, so very short haulage distance. So our mine operating cost is very low. The processing, very simple. It grinds well, about $7 per ton for process cost. So all of that relates into and the fact that we're in a good area with all this infrastructure around into that $800 per ounce ASIC. And we've seen we've seen some of the ASIC for projects increasing. And as you look at the majors and some of the projects, some of the they're starting to go into lower grade materials. Well, while our grades are very reasonable, they don't come with a lot of cost. So yeah, that's where we're sitting.
Run me through the PFS, sorry, the feasibility study that obviously you can't talk about it at the moment, but when's that due? And following that, what sort of work is left to do other than the permitting to get this into a final investment decision and potentially develop this mine?
Well, look, the last year we commissioned Samuel Engineering, a minority-owned company out of Denver, Colorado, to do the feasibility study. So all the work has been done on the feasibility study, all the geotechnical work, the hydrological work, the geochemistry on the rock that we're mining and the tailings that we would leave behind. So that's all in our data room at the moment. But, in the run up to the end of last year, finalizing that feasibility study when energy prices were bouncing around, and we were still wondering about supply chain issues and so on. And we still needed to finalize our royalty. It didn't seem appropriate to be putting a pin in that feasibility study. So we'll be looking to do that over the next few months. So we'll have the feasibility study out in the first half of the year.
Okay, and you mentioned a royalty there, obviously in the pre-fees. That's the state royalty. That was looking around 5%. What is there any movement on that? What's the discussions on the royalty?
Right. So our landlord is the Office of State Lands and Investments, and we have a lease with the state which we've just renewed. Now, there were a couple of provisions in that, and one of them was a sliding scale royalty. And you know, the folks were very much familiar with the coal mining business and a mine mouth royalty, and it was not quite appropriate for us. So we have worked with the Office of State Lands and Investments. We've sponsored them to get an independent consultant to look at hard rock mining and what's an appropriate royalty for this kind of deposit. And we anticipate that the royalty on an NSR basis will be about 2%,
Good.
which is an improvement over what we were facing before.
Is the idea that you'll get that first and then we can see the feasibility study? Because obviously that
Correct,
will
yeah.
adjust the economics quite a bit.
That's right. You know, what happens is that the studies have been done, the recommendations made, but the board of directors of the Office of State Lands need to approve the final numbers, and so that we hope will happen in April.
Good.
And in the interim, we will be finalizing our equipment, updating our mine costs, and more importantly, updating our reserves and resources in line with the trailing average for gold and copper, which has increased since our pre-feasibility study. So there's going to be swings and roundabouts, but again, I think the pre-feasibility study was a snapshot in time. It shows that this project, the Copper King CK Gold project, is a really robust project with a lot of leverage to the upside.
And I just want to touch on the permitting here because I guess, other than the feasibility study, that is the last hurdle, really, isn't it? What's the process of permitting in Wyoming, and have there been any examples of the government permitting gold mines or copper mines or any other mining projects in the last couple of years? What's the sentiment of mining in that area? How likely is it to get permitted?
So the state of Wyoming is a really interesting state. About 600,000 people. The revenue generated for the state comes largely from the resource sector: coal, oil, gas, a little bit of uranium, trona. Are the principal resources that they're being exploited at the moment. So a copper and gold at the moment with our project is a nice diversification, you know, particularly at a time when coal mining is a little bit out of favor and nobody's building any new coal-fired power stations. So we find that the state agencies really understand the mining business and they're very supportive of it. Now, our project is located on a state section and it's surrounded by private ground. And we really do not have any nexus to the federal government. The only potential of federal government involvement really was whether the Army Corps of Engineers were going to be looking at the waters of the US. We were deemed non-jurisdictional for the footprint of the project. So as a consequence, we're dealing with the Wyoming Department of Environmental Quality. So that process is going really well. We submitted our mine operating permit and closure plan in September of last year. We've been through a completeness review, and now we are looking to support the technical review of our project. And you know, if all goes well, we're toward the end of this year. We would expect that the project will be reviewed and a recommendation made. So we could have a project approval as soon as the end of this year, or perhaps in Q1 of next year.
Good. Okay. And then I guess it comes to financing. What's the strategy around that?
Well, financing takes a fair amount of time. The financiers need to do their due diligence on the project. And we'll have the feasibility study to have a look at by the in the first half of the year. However, if folks want to come and look at the information, sign an NDA. We're actually inviting people to have a look at the project and get into the details so that we can move this thing forward quickly in anticipation of putting a financing package together toward the end of next year in anticipation of the permit application being approved. So the financing, we hope to make use of some facilities which are existing in the state of Wyoming to encourage economic development. So long-term, low-interest rate notes to sponsor development within the state. We're also looking at the equipment suppliers. Obviously, a big part of our capital cost is associated with the concentrator that we need to build. FL Schmidt, Mezzo Autocampo, to name a couple, have access to capital which can assist us in building out the project. And they want to do it because they want to sell their equipment.
Sure. Okay.
So yeah, it's the financing coming together on the back of some long-term low interest notes. As we de-risk the project, the recognition in the equity space would put us in a position to look at that equity component as well.
Okay, so that's moving along very well, and we'll hopefully get to an investment decision towards the end of this year, and we'll see this mine in production before not too long. But on the other side of the company, there are some exciting exploration assets in Nevada and Idaho. Maybe just a bit of an update on that, if you don't mind.
Well, that's great. I'm glad you mentioned that because we did some drilling in Nevada on our Maggie Creek project, and we were fortunate enough, acting on our geologist's hunch, that we would find the host horizon for all the big gold deposits on the Carlin Trend, and we found it, and that resulted in Nevada Gold Mines buying our Maggie Creek property from us for $2.75 million, and we have the opportunity to retain a royalty on that project. But our big exciting project is the Keystone property in Nevada, and that's on the Eureka, Battle Mountain, Cortez Trend. We're just 10 miles away from all of the activity that Nevada Gold Mines, Barrick, Newmont are engaged in. We're in the same kind of host rocks. We have upper plate rocks hosting potentially heap leachable material. But the really exciting thing is that we have this Wenban 5 formation, which is a host of some of the very big deposits. And we've got really incredible anomalies to follow up on. So in the fullness of time, as we get the financing, we'll be looking at our Keystone property. It's 20 square miles. We've hardly touched it. It's a great land position. And then we also have our Chalice property in Idaho. So the future looks good.
Good. George, thank you for your time.
My pleasure.